Today, we're going to talk about how to ride with feel, and some of the things that we'll cover are underlying beliefs. We did a whole webinar on underlying beliefs, and so I'm just going to cover that quickly. But if you have any questions about it, just feel free to ask in the chat box or unmute. And then skills versus feeling, letting versus manipulating, and then how to deal a little bit with nerves. So I think that when we're talking about riding with feeling, that these beliefs, that they're kind of training beliefs that I live my life by, I think they are really important. And when you hold these in your mindset, then it makes it easier for you to keep directing yourself toward riding with feeling and not getting stuck in mechanical. We have to build skills. We'll talk about that later. But sometimes we end up in this kind of how things should be. And so underlying belief number one, or training belief for me, number one, my horse is always trying to figure out what I am trying to tell him or her to do. When we start our lessons with that premise, like really think about it, and that is the basis for everything we do in the ride, it's really going to keep you in a good mindset to ride with feeling and to try to explain things better. I do not have to get everything perfect every day. This one is very difficult, but very important. With perfectionism can put us backwards, not forward. So we have to let go of trying to be perfect, and we just want to do the best work, do good work every day, and move ourselves forward in the strength and in the understanding of the work that we're doing. I'm curious about how my horse learns. Number three, I'm curious about how my horse learns. And all of the horses are going to learn in a little bit different way. Part of that is how their mechanics are. And part of it is going to be how they grew up in their environment, and of course their temperament. So, but we want to be curious about how our horses learn, how the horse that you're riding learns, not the one that you rode last time or your last horse, but get interested in how this one, the one you're riding right now, part of being present, is actually learning. Pressure creates change. Lack of pressure means stay the same. So to me, when I apply an aid, I want my horse to give me a reaction. And then when I get that reaction, I'm going to release the pressure, or the horse releases his own pressure by moving away from me. And then that means to stay the same. So I don't want to have to keep holding and holding and holding once I get the shape or the tempo or the size step that I want. I want my horse to change because I create an aid or pressure. And then the lack of pressure shows him that that was the right answer, but he needs to continue on. Now that, of course, that's a theory. And we have to teach our horses this. It's not something that just happens all by itself. But when we ride with that theory, then we're not going to hit that point of no return. We're not always holding our horses up. We're not always having to push them. They have to swing and go on their own. We create an aid, we create a change. If it's a transition or an angle for a half pass or something like that, we create pressure that creates the movement. The lack of pressure shows them that it was right, and they need to continue on in that same way until we make another aid. I can carry myself independently from my horse. This is very important. My horse can carry himself. Sorry, number 5. My horse can carry himself. Number 6, I can carry myself. So I want to be sure that we don't get stuck to each other. So you will see people in different riding techniques where they're going to create movement by pressure. And I feel that, especially in this group, small women, we need to teach our horses to carry themselves. We need to teach our horses to go independently from our balance. Otherwise, we're going to end up not being strong enough. So I am going sometimes to have to create change, create between my seat, my leg, and my reins, create pressure. But I really want to carry my posture, my position independent from my horse. So I'm not leaning on the rein. I'm not actually leaning into the saddle. I'm carrying myself, and then I apply my aids from that balanced place. Number 7, I am looking for direct results. If I need to manipulate things, this means I'm being misunderstood. So as I'm teaching my horse, sometimes I'm going to have to fill in the gaps. Sometimes they're not going to understand what I want. But we have our circle of aids. And when I create an aid, I want a direct result. And then from that direct result, I can go right ahead with a reward. If I have to manipulate the horse, so in other words, I ask, I don't get what I want, and then I manipulate it into what I want, that means that my horse is not understanding that direct aid. So then we have to go back to the drawing board as far as teaching, okay? It is easy to make progress. It is okay to make progress in small steps. This is very, very important. And when you're willing to make your progress in small steps, you're definitely going to be more open to learning feel. If you try to jump over things, skip over things, and not do those small steps, then sometimes you're going to end up in a mechanical ride instead of a feeling ride. If I lose the relaxation, my horse is going to lose the ability to learn. Very, very important. The second the horse crosses over into that tension place, they are not learning what their body is doing anymore. They're reacting from stress and worry and tension, and they're not thinking about where they're putting their feet. They're not thinking about what the aids mean to them. My self-talk is very important. So how I'm dealing with making mistakes or approaching new subjects, all of this, what's going on in your head, the fact that you're saying positive things, you're telling your horse what you want, not what you don't want, things like that, very, very important. And then my body language can influence my horse, even if I don't do everything perfect. It's super important that we all say that where we are today, my horse can understand these basic aids the way that I offer to give them today. And yes, do I want to get better? Absolutely, I do. Am I going to improve my skills? 100%. We're going to work on improving our skills every day. But we have to be careful not to blame ourselves so much that we don't let the horses have some responsibility. So we're going to teach them what the aids mean, and then we're going to ride them through so that the horse gets to that reward quickly. And every time we do that, even if we don't make the aid exactly perfect, the horse is going to try harder and harder to do what we're asking him to do. So my body language can influence my horse, even if I do not do everything perfect. Now, that doesn't mean you're allowed to ride recklessly. That's not what I'm saying, but I'm just trying to help everyone that we need to understand that we're starting where we are. We're definitely going to improve our skills every day. We're going to work to improve our skills. But if we're getting on and we are riding a program that is designed for the level of horse that we have and for the understanding that the horse and that we have of those exercises, which hopefully that's, where you're starting, you are capable to ask the horse to do what you want. If you make a mistake, but your intention is behind it, and you're really riding in a positive way for what you want, your horse will get the point. But if you're in your head and you're thinking about all the things you're doing wrong, then that's going to be reflected in how your horse is accepting the aids or not accepting the aids, or working through the movements. So this is really important. Number 11. Let's do that again. I'm going to say it again. My body language can influence my horse even if I do not do everything perfect or perfectly. Does anybody have any questions about those 11 training beliefs? All right. So you guys hear me say that there's a little bit of a difference. Hello, Peyton. In the skills. Good to see you. That we don't want to take it personally, that we need to develop our skills. But what we do want to bring every day to our riding is our personal energy and our own unique way and relationship with our horse. So, but skills don't really have anything to do with that. There is a structure for the riding that we want to do. There's a way that we know what the legs mean go forward. We need our hands, the reins are going to mean to stop, to turn, or to become supple. And we want to have those skills and develop those skills and not be embarrassed or stressed or worried that we need to do that. It is work. It's hard to do it. Sometimes, depending on the level of the horse or the nervousness of the horse or the movement of the horse, sometimes our skills are better and really fluent. Sometimes we have to work a little bit harder. So skill is defined as the ability to do something well. But does having skill when we're riding, the skill with which we apply an aid or close our leg or use our seat, does that take feeling? Can you ride well without the feeling of what is going on under the saddle? Well, interesting questions to ponder. Does it really have any value to develop feel? So some people will ride in a and very successfully. And I actually am not even saying anything bad about it, but they will ride with a lack of feel for what the horse does naturally, and have more of an intention of manipulating movements and movement out of the horses without first learning how to move with the horse. I personally think that our most successful riders are the ones that develop a feeling for how a horse moves naturally underneath them, and then works together with that natural movement to develop the higher levels and the maximum potential out of that particular horse. But there are many, many successful people that don't necessarily value the developing that feeling, and that's totally fine. I'm not judging anybody. I just personally enjoy riding more when I feel what's going on and I'm working together with that feeling. So if you think about the skills necessary for training level, for instance, and you can, you can go up the levels. I just start here. We start at the beginning. So skills would be our posture control, that we can control our own balance, our own position. The ability to manage basic aids, stop, turn, and go, and ability to create balance and some neck control. So balance just needs to be equal over the 4 feet. I'm not talking at training level about, really balancing the horse on the hind legs, just balanced over the 4 feet and managing that. And then some neck control, that you don't have the horse in constant resistance in your training level. You need to have that skill of memorizing your test, and preparation for transitions, I think, is important. And it's important to maintain your concentration. So these would be skills for us to work on developing better and better to make us better and better training level riders. What does feeling have to do with this? Anybody have any ideas? So if you can, most people that would be riding training level, they would be able to feel the difference in the canter to the trot, right? But what about the canter lead? If you want to be able to feel if you're on the correct canter lead, you're going to have more awareness. You're going to have more feeling in your body. If you have not yet developed the feel for the lead, you can look to see. The same like with your posting diagonal, for instance. You can look down and see that you're on the right one, but later on, you're going to start to just be able to feel that you're on the right one. The same with the lead. A younger rider or a less experienced rider is going to need to look at that shoulder to see that it's leading, to see that they're on that correct canter lead. Then over time, their eyes and their body are going to start to work together, and the eyes are teaching the body what that correct lead feels like. So over time, your subconscious is actually working to develop, this is correct, this is incorrect. Your eyes start by telling, or and also probably your trainer is going to tell you even before your eyes, because your trainer needs to say it, then your eyes can start to see it, then your body starts to feel it, and then this starts to be more automatic. This is a very basic thing of where your subconscious would start to help you in your riding, where later it's going to happen with flying changes, or how the neck is feeling, how the hind legs are feeling under you. All these things we start to give away, and our brain doesn't have to deal with them as much, so that we can think about more important things. Are you going to have better timing if you can feel it in addition to seeing it? So, what would be the benefits of being able to feel that you were on the right lead rather than having to look down? Exactly. You could focus on something else. So you're good, Carrie. You're the the brain can't handle everything all at one time. So it's, if you are writing a test, for instance, you've got all these things in your mind. What's really important is that, for starters, we don't go off course, right? There's Andrea. We get her every once in a while, and then she disappears again. um, so the brain has to be thinking about doing the proper pattern, and then you've got some outside influences. If you're doing a test, right, you've got some outside influences going on. So maybe you have to think about um if something is possibly going to spook your horse, or um if there's some flowers, or if it's windy. So part of your brain has to be thinking about that. The more we can start to give to our feeling, which is a little bit the same thing as our subconscious, then the more our brain can worry about being more accurate. It can be thinking about preparation for transitions. It can be, putting things at the right place. Have a little bit of our peripheral vision on what's going on the outside, in case you need to keep a little bit of attention in the ring, this kind of thing. And then you can definitely have better timing for your transitions if you're feeling where things are going and how things are going underneath you. For a young horse, you're trying to prepare a canter depart. If you really know the feeling of the right lead versus the left lead, you can influence the horse much easier onto the correct lead, rather than just pushing, letting it pick up whichever lead, having to look at it and then stop, and then picking up the other one. And we all know that this is how we have to learn in the beginning. But this is an example in training level of things that happen later with all the other movements. So the younger we can learn, or the earlier we can learn, or if we didn't really learn it, start paying attention and getting back to that, that will set a really nice base for moving forward. So the subconscious is the part of your mind that remembers something even when you are not actively trying to do so. And there's all this, of course, talk about subconscious and conscious. Conscious, aware of and responding to surroundings, being present. um you're This isn't a time when we would be using our subconscious, or we're using our feel, our remembering of what things feel like, in order to ride better and teach ourselves to respond more correctly at the exact moment that we need to, rather than it having to go up into our eyes. Then we have to think about it, and then we have to do something about it. And the amount of time that takes, we all know, is too long when we're trying to move up the levels. It has to start there, because that's how we have to start with riding. The same as when you're training, you're your trainer is teaching you, right? Uh, the better we get, the quicker we can see what's going on, and we can try to influence things in a better moment. But oftentimes, when things get a little bit hectic, the trainer will get behind the rider and behind the horse. And so the cues that we're giving you end up with a little bit of timing being off. So my goal is to always try to give the rider a little bit of the reason behind why we're doing something, so that then when I say, okay, now it's this, now it's that, now it's that, then you start to feel the results of those aids, and then you start to act without waiting for me. And that way you get that direct result. You get that good feeling for your aids. But in the beginning, when you're riding with that trainer, it can sometimes feel a little bit off, because it's going from the horse into our eyes, into our mind. We have to say what we want you to do, coming back, going into your mind, and then going into your body. And oftentimes the timing can be a little off. So you have to give yourself a little bit to that situation and try to stay with it and get with what you're getting at, rather than getting frustrating that it doesn't feel exactly right, because it isn't going to feel exactly right until you develop that feeling to respond more with your body and a little bit less having to think about it. And this takes practice, a lot of practice. And where that response comes from is also really important. So in that moment, sometimes we're talking about trying to stay a little calmer, maybe calmer in our seat, calmer in the way that we're riding from the saddle, and then applying the aids to motivate the horse from the leg, or listening on the half vaults and these kind of things. So at first, when we're riding, when we're learning how to ride, we might feel like we have no control. We are, in a sense, victims to our horse's natural instincts. So when you first start learning to ride, this is where it starts. You get on, you don't know the rules, you don't know the controls, and you're on this big animal, and you feel like a victim. Whatever he does, it's his own thing. I can't control it. Then later, we start to learn the aids, and we become empowered to ask our horses to do things. And we find out that we do have some control. And so in this empowered stage, many people stop there. Well, I can make my horse do this. I can ask my horse to do that. I can get them to do that. And many people kind of stay in that empowered place. But for me, I think that riding is the most fun when we develop more feel and more rapport. We learn that we can set things in motion and then be more trusting of our horses to act on our wishes. So that's what you see when you see these ladies out there doing these crazy Grand Prix. And you can tell when they go down the center line. Isabel is like a perfect example, because when the horse is really with her, she really dances, and she gets this huge smile on her face, and she just literally knows that they have this feeling, and she doesn't have to micromanage everything. She sets everything in motion, and she trusts that it's going to happen. And of course, there has to be preparation and there has to be aids, but she's riding in from the back seat, and she's giving the horse the cues and the aids, but the horse knows what to do, and she's able to act on, the horse is able to act on her wishes, and she's able to trust that it's going to happen. And this is, for me, that next level of riding, which is, of course, and you can go through every level. As you go up, you're going to be, you need to have the empowered stage. Okay, we're moving up the level. I need to teach you how to make a shoulder in. I need to teach you how to make this walk canter transition. I need to teach these things. But then later, it doesn't take as much manipulating, because the horse mentally understands what you're asking, and you ride with that kind of um, belief in yourself and in your training that you taught your horse correctly, so that you can ride with feeling the way the horse moves naturally and influence it with the right timing, which for me, that is the most amazing feeling. And it doesn't always come together like that, but it's definitely our dream. Happens probably a lot more at home than at the shows. But when you have those tests at the shows, it's just you come out not caring what the judge thought, because that you had that rapport, that you had that really good feeling with your horse, and that understanding, and the feeling was mutual. And so and that's really our goal. I think that's what makes us get up every morning and really try and work hard at this. So the next thing that is on our list to cover is letting versus manipulating. Manipulating is Mr. Schumacher's word for this, and I couldn't come up with a better word, but I'm not sure that exactly is. I have to keep working on that. Letting versus manipulating. So we talked about that a lot when we were talking about positive and defending aids a couple weeks ago. But if you have questions about that, feel free to ask. But letting is about putting something in motion and going with it. And manipulating is about holding it, pushing it, gripping it, creating a movement out of who's stronger than who. And it's the feeling that if you let go, that the wrong thing is going to happen. We always have periods of our rides where this is happening, that every ride is not perfect, but we want to be honest in our riding and honest with ourselves when we start manipulating, and then get back to that idea of being able to put the aid, get the response, and ride like it's working. So a perfect example of this for me is teaching one tempies. I have to say that teaching one tempies is like one of the hardest things to do. And what ends up happening is that when the horse misunderstands or makes a mistake, I start manipulating. So you get this feeling like you have to ride more. And it can happen in anything. It can happen in a half pass. It can happen in pirouettes, in anything. But I find it plagues me the most when I have a horse that I'm trying to teach one tempies to, and you get a certain number, but then you want more, and then the horse makes a mistake, and then you come at the diagonal riding the horse stronger instead of riding the horse, setting him up, teaching him what he's supposed to do, and then letting him do the job. And then when the mistake happens, keeping the rhythm and then just starting them up again. So for me, that's one of the hardest times, but I'm sure we all have something in our riding where we feel less fluent. We feel more like we can't let go, like something's going to go wrong. And so that we want to be aware of that in our riding and in our training, and then try to work through those. So when you first teach a horse how to come to collected canter, right, and you teach them this is how you respond to a collecting aid. When you get to that collection, you need to ride it like it's working. But we all have the feeling that we need to hold it in collection, and then the horse doesn't take responsibility and do it on its own. And so then they feel claustrophobic in the collected canter. And then while you're in collected canter, you try to make a pirouette, but the horse isn't cantering by itself anymore. So actually, that was something that we worked a little bit with at Andrea's a couple of weeks ago. That idea that you can take the horse into collection and then give it the responsibility to stay there on its own. And of course, you have to develop it. And maybe you do, 3 or 4 steps, and then you help a little bit, and then 3 or 4 steps, and then you ride forward again. These kind of things, but you're always looking for that self-carriage and that responsibility. So when we develop feel for how the horse moves naturally, we'll have better timing and better understanding of why things happen. So if you really make a point in every ride or part of your ride to really focus on where the feet are, what order they're going in, and what is a good timing, when do I get a good response on an aid, and when is the horse simply in the wrong moment to give me what I want. If you're making a half pass, for instance, half pass is not like in the canter is not like a trot, where the trot, it's the horse is crossing over. In the canter, every step is a jump to the side. The legs are not crossing over. So if we don't have the feeling of when the horse is getting ready to jump off the ground, we are going to be pushing the horse at the wrong time. If we don't have the feeling of when the half halt goes through and when the horse can give in to the half halt, then we're going to be pushing the horse more and more on the forehand in the half pass canter, for instance. So spending a little bit of time every day and tuning into the order of the footfalls and the speed and the length of the strides and how do we manage that is really going to help us with the timing of our aids. And I think it's super important that we make that a priority. So we teach the horses the correct responses, and then through strength, conditioning, and understanding, we're able to move up the levels. Letting is similar to surrendering to the fact that the horse may make a mistake. When a mistake happens, it's simply an opportunity for a lesson. So this is like I'm teaching my horse, this is your job and this is my job. And so having the feeling for this, noticing that you asked your horse to be responsible and then you felt them mentally and physically take over that responsibility is really going to help you to be able to ride in more collection, ride more difficult movements, because you keep developing that feel. When we get tense and we get grippy, like we're worried something's not going to work, we can't apply our aids in the right timing, and we can't apply them to affect the horse correctly. So one of the biggest mistakes I feel that we can make in riding is to take on too much responsibility. This will create pressure, and pressure results in a point of no return. So you guys that ride with me, you know that point of no return is the feeling like I'm making the aid correctly, but the opposite of what I want is happening. The point of no return. So that comes by creating too much pressure, not asking the horse to take responsibility, and then all of a sudden they're leaning too much in the reins. The half halt gets them running instead of sitting. The legs get them stopping instead of going. This kind of thing. Okay. So, one of the biggest mistakes we can make in riding or training is taking on too much responsibility. We have to teach our horses what their job is. This is your job. This is my job, in a nice way, friendly way. Of course, we're always riding in a friendly way, but we have to explain the rules. And then another aspect of this is when we're training horses, we need to balance where they are in their training and where they are in their strength level, and then where we want them to develop to. So if we're happy in training level, the amount of responsibility they have to take is less than if we want them to move up the levels. So depending on the age of your horse, or if your horse has some kind of coming back from an injury or something like this, you're going to manage that. But you're also going to manage it by keeping things balanced. So for me, there should never be an offset of balance from the hind legs into the bridle. That we don't want that. We always want the weight equal over 4 feet, and the reins are for steering, for stopping, or for suppling, but they're never for balance. When your horse thinks of the reins like balance, we're not in good shape. So if you have a horse coming back from an injury, for instance, we have to maintain the balance in a way that we are not over facing the weak link. Because if you start over facing the weak link, then you're going to end up with the balance being in the reins. And when the balance is in the reins, everything else starts to go down the hill. So think of things like that. If we're moving up the levels, every horse has a weak link. If it's the back, if it's one hind leg, if the neck is too soft, there can be many things. So as we're moving up the levels, we've got to bring that weak link along with us. We have to have the feeling and sensitivity to notice when that weak link becomes disengaged, where we've overfaced it. And then because that weak link is not participating anymore, and the horse is putting too much weight on the opposite hind leg or on the bit or something like this, we've got to tone down the work and then build it back up again when that weak link is stronger. So when we're saying to the horse, this is your job and this is my job, we also have to be smart about it, how we are training day to day, week to week, month to month, because we want to be developing a horse in a way that it's getting stronger so that it can move up the levels. We've got to face it every once in a while, put some challenges in there, but not overdo it in a way where we're letting that weak link start to cause something else to take over, whether it's the bit or the other leg or something like that. You can see it a lot when you're looking at some horses that have a little bit less quality of the way their hind legs comparatively to their front legs, and those front legs take over, and then oftentimes one hind leg will get a little bit out of whack. You'll see them going short long in the medium trots. If this isn't handled, it's going to be short long in the pied passage. You might see it really fluent in one direction in the half pass and then less so. So we've always got to manage that, both sides, and keep that weak link coming along with the rest of the party. And that just takes some feel. So it's important to teach the aids with many rewards so your horse fully understands the requirements, and it's not going to bring success if you're constantly setting your horse up for failure. If we went back to training belief number 9, actually, I think we could talk about it, 2 things. But training belief number 9, if I lose the relaxation, my horse loses the ability to learn. So we want to be careful that we are teaching the aids with many rewards so that your horse fully understands the requirements. And then every time you give a reward, and if you feel like you're not giving the aids perfectly, or you can't find that moment of give quickly enough, the voice can always override a lack of timing. So always think about that. If you're like riding, you're trying to teach your horse something, and then you feel like the horse is trying to do what you want, but you didn't have the good balance, or you didn't have the good timing to say, yeah, that's it right away. Now that's good. Use your voice, fill it in with your voice. That's better than losing your seat or losing the rapport with the reins or something like that. It's the voice can fill in those moments. So does anybody have any questions so far about what we are talking about there? We're letting versus manipulating, and then teaching so that we can build up that rapport, so that we do feel confident that our horse knows mentally what we want it to do, so that we can set things in motion and then ride like it's working. And knowing that the horse knows what our aids mean is going to bring us that relaxation to be letting instead of manipulating. So then the last part of this is dealing with nerves. The horses that we learn to ride on are going to greatly affect our reactions. So we talked about the subconscious before. The subconscious reactions we have must be trained and retrained, especially after bad experiences. And I think we have to be all the time consciously putting into our field, putting into our subconscious what we want in there. Sometimes we have to take things out. Sometimes we have responses or reactions that we know they're no longer are helping us. They helped us before. For instance, what's the most important thing when we first learn how to ride? The most important thing is that we don't fall off. So our body, when we first get on the horse, is going to hold us into the saddle until we figure out that gravity actually keeps us in the saddle. But if we don't consciously tell our legs that you no longer need to grip because gravity is keeping us in the saddle, then our legs are still going to go and save us when our horse does certain things. Now, there's certain times that's very useful, but there's other times where you're not going to fall off and you need to just use your core and keep yourself upright and go with the motion and not start gripping. So we need to teach our body that was useful before, but we're not going to do that anymore. We have a new way, and we have to install that new way of riding, that new way of swinging, that new way of carrying ourselves, and start to eliminate that other reaction that we had to losing our balance. Subconscious reactions we have must be trained and retrained. This is not a bad thing. We are not bad people because we have to go back and sometimes deal with these things. I don't think you could talk to any upper level rider that didn't tell you that if they had a really bad experience, they would have to go and redo that, or that they have to work a little bit on it every day, teaching their body the correct reactions to certain things that their horses do. Maybe they had a horse that was really uptight at one point, and the new horse doesn't respond badly, but does have that kind of energy or something like this. We have to be constantly retraining that subconscious reaction. But the awareness of your subconscious reaction is a double-edged sword. It is impossible to deal with the problem if you don't know it exists. Awareness of the problem is imperative to moving through it. So oftentimes I will get myself into trouble because I might see a reaction that somebody gives to something that their horse does that I'll want to kind of sort out and bring to awareness. Or in another way, I had, for instance, a lesson on flying changes one time with a very, very good trainer. And he made me aware of something that I was doing with my legs that I didn't, wasn't really benefiting me on that horse. Something that I had developed with another horse and was necessary, but that horse, it wasn't benefiting me. But we had a rhythm about it, right? So when we're doing the tempi changes, the horse was kind of used to me doing it that way. And as soon as he made me aware of it, I didn't want to do it anymore, but I started making mistakes with the changes. So now there's two ways that I can look at that. I could look at it like, okay, now you just messed up my tempi changes. Or I can say, this is important, and I want to learn how to become fluent in using my aids in that way to bring myself now to the next level, to a better level. But it will disrupt the flow for a little while when you become aware of this thing that you're doing that you don't want to do anymore. Flow will cause mistakes. Mistakes create fear. What fear? Is it fear that I'm going to fall off? No, but it's fear that I am making mistakes. Fear of what people are going to think of me for making mistakes. When I get fearful, what do? I want to hold on to the way I was doing it before, because that makes me feel more confident and comfortable that things are going to happen the way I always did them. Those 4 tempis are going to work. Those 3 tempis are going to work. But it's not going to make those changes a little bit more expressive. Maybe they need to be straighter. Maybe the horse needs to be more honest in the connection. And I want to bring it up to the next level. So having the awareness of something I need to change is important. And being relaxed about losing the flow, but staying focused to try to change that thing I want to change is really important. Change requires awareness. This is really important. And awareness requires patience, understanding, and somebody good to help you so that you don't end up going down a bad road of making the mistakes, fighting with the mistakes, and not staying true to that positive change that you're trying to make in your application of the aids or in your posture. And I think in journaling, it can really be helpful to write about these experiences, because you can kind of get it out of your head. If you have something bad happen, you can write it down. You can write a little bit about how you think it's affecting your riding, and then you can process with your brain and talk your subconscious into responding better again, or better. So if you had a step back, then you're going to have to work your subconscious through not responding on every time it feels bad like that. Or if you've brought awareness to something you want to change, then you're going to journal about that. Okay, well, I found out that, I'm riding with my left leg too far forward when it's on the outside. And I feel that this comes because I'm tight in my left hip, or I'm, don't have as much feeling in my left hand, or, whatever it is, write it down. It's super helpful. These are the steps that I talked with my trainer about how I'm going to solve that problem, and then write it down for a couple of weeks. What this is, how it's going. And this is where I feel like it's really working good for me. And this is where I still want to work on that habit and make it better. When you start to do that, it really is going to help you make positive changes in your riding, and you're going to actually feel like you jump up in levels instead of just making that gradual changes, because having the awareness of what you want to change and then going about it together with your trainer, and then analyzing, what went well and where do we still need to work, you're really going to get a handle on that. And there's some things that are really important that need to be changed, and then there's other things that you're thinking about a lot in your head that are only details. I have no idea who is giving me all these text messages, but it's making me a little crazy. So you want to work together with your trainer about what are the big rocks compared to the pebbles. What are the priorities versus the details? So something might have come into your mind. We all do that. Like, you watch a video or you read a book or you're talking to somebody and they're like, this is I think you should change this about your riding, or this could be better. And you start fixating on that thing, but that thing is it's a detail. It is not a big rock. It is not a priority. And then your mind is thinking all the time about that little detail, and it's not thinking about, I could really be more grounded. I could really be swinging with my horse better. I could be paying more attention to how my horse is moving under the saddle. Blah, na 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 na. These kind of things are priorities, and we've got to work together with our trainers and with our journals and stay really on track. Becoming aware of the priorities will influence your progress. Letting yourself get fixated on details is not going to bring you where you want to go ultimately. Once you've got these big rocks polished and you want to start thinking about these little details, absolutely. But if you feel like when you start thinking about a detail that you lose a big rock, then we don't have that in our subconscious well enough that we can start thinking about that detail. So we've got to be careful about that. When we're riding at home, we're building skill. When we're building the skill, we want to make it repeatable. When we take it to the show, then we're going to make that skill a priority. It's important to know what you need for yourself in order to make progress. Shows have many layers. Scores do not show everything. It's very, very important that we are analyzing our own tests and our own feeling that we have in the ring and being honest with ourselves about what was going on. I can get an 8 on a movement, an 8.5 on a movement, a 9 on a movement. I had a test one time. I can't remember what I got. Whatever it was, 74%. The horse was literally, bye, Meg. The horse was literally out of control for most of the test, but he was an amazing mover. And I couldn't get a half halt in. And so I just rode it on this, skidding on the seat of my pants. I do not think that that's how I need to ride my tests because I got 74%. I think I got to go home and do my homework. Okay. It's very, very important that we're honest about the rapport that we have with our horses in the ring. When we're riding at home, we're building the skill. We take the skill out, we take that out into the show ring, and then we get a score. And the score is on what the judge thought we looked like. Sometimes we can make things look better than they are. Sometimes we think they're better than they look. We have to know what our goals are and what we need in order to build up that rapport with our horse, that feel with our horse that things are happening when we want them to, that we can prepare our movements. So remembering what values you have will help you get the results you want. When you honor these values, you cannot help but make progress. Even if the outside world seems like you're not moving, even to the outside world, they don't think that you're getting anywhere. If you're honoring your skills and your values, you are going to move forward. You have to honor your own path. This is imperative. If you cannot move forward within your own value system, you have to ask for guidance, okay? So you've got to be sure that your trainer knows what's the most important thing to you, and to know you and your trainer work together about what are the skills that you need in order to build that success that you want. Skills are not personal, but your values are personal. It can be that we do a test, and because of our nerves, we are unable to apply the aids well. We need to practice that skill. In addition, we need to get our mindset correct so that our nerves don't block our skill set. And the nerves are normally resulting from lack of proper preparation. What is the worst feeling? When you go to a show and you feel like you're not prepared. Lack of trust in our preparation. So when you first are riding a new horse or a new level or with a new trainer, sometimes you're not really sure if things are going to work or not. So you have to build that trust in your preparation. And that's part of why I think journaling is awesome, because after you make your little plan for how you're going to get ready for the show, and then you journal about how that goes, and then you journal about your show, then you can go through the show a little bit and what parts worked and what parts didn't work. And now what's my next preparation going to go? And you build trust in your preparation. You can't have trust right away. You have to build the trust in it. And you do that by being really honest with yourself about how your test felt. Nerves can result from fear of people's opinions. We have to work on that. We always have to work on that. We must not ever let that enter our heads. We can be proud. We want to take our best self out. We're going to show the world, of course, the fruits of our labor and the hard work we've been doing to get better. But we must not fear what people think of our riding, because that's just going to hold us back. Fear of failure is another reason why we get nervous, and we have to put that failure, if we really do fail, if it really doesn't go the way we want it to, we're going to learn. So that the word failure has no place. It can be a lesson. It can be an example for us of perhaps a bad decision that we made, that we need to make a different one next time. We're dealing with our emotions a little bit incorrectly. We need to learn how to manage those better. But failure is just a lesson. There's nobody that is competing at a high level that hasn't had tests that didn't go well. And because those tests didn't go well, they stand in a better place to handle any situation as they move forward in their careers. So failure is a word that we need to take out of our vocabulary. And then I think that nerves also can be a lack of ability to center yourself in the moment. And that takes practice and meditating. Everybody, we know how much I like to talk about the meditating, but you can get nervous if you don't have that ability to center yourself in the moment and then move forward from that positive center. Does anybody have any questions about any of that? It's kind of a lot, but kind of fun. So, but if you have questions, you know, you can always email me, and we can make a little bit more about this next week.